Blended Podcasts. Brought to you by Blended Audio.
Welcome to Centre Stage, the South African Film and Theatre Podcast. I'm Peter Bates.
And I'm Alistair King and Daniels, and today we are going to be talking about creativity.
Creativity, the source of creativity. Where does it come from?
Yes, how one creates ideas.
How one creates ideas, as if it was a conscious process, Alistair.
Yeah, well, we'll get into that. So, we're just going to jump right in, and I'm going to say I found this author, although I didn't read the book. I watched interviews about the book.
Okay.
And his name is Jonah Lehrer. And
Yes.
his book is called Imagine How Creativity Works. So he seems to have a good take on this.
Look, I mean, everything, every piece of art, theatre, everything starts with some creativity, starts with an idea, right? Do you know what I like? I like titles. I hear a title. I don't know. It just has like a ring to it. It's just like iconic. And then I know that phrase has to have something associated with it, some play or something like that. That's how it works for me.
So when you hear this like title, you immediately start thinking of something. Your brain starts working.
Exactly. I like to look for titles. In fact, when I write things, I usually start with the title. Which I know some people, which is backwards, because some people are like, we start writing, and then like to actually find a title that describes the piece is so difficult. But I always start with the title and work backwards.
Well, that will tie into what Jonah Lehrer talks about, is sort of this moment of insight. So when you're saying you hear a title and then you immediately start thinking of all these, it's like you get almost like an epiphany, these ideas that just flood in from a seemingly random source.
Yes.
Sorry. So he talks about that, and he has this little game or this exercise
To become more creative.
No.
I was going to say, is there a magic bullet? Help me, please.
He has this sort of exercise to sort of manufacture this moments of insight, and I thought it was just interesting to
How does it work?
do it.
Should we play it right now?
Yes.
Okay.
You get like three words.
Okay.
Right? And they, on the face of it, have nothing to do with each other.
Okay.
But when you hear them, there's a word that sort of connects all of them.
Okay.
That you pop into your mind. And that popping into your mind is this moment of insight.
Would you like me to give you 3 words?
No, I'm going to give you 3 words.
Okay.
Okay. So your 3 words are age.
Okay.
Age.
Again.
No, I'm trying to think.
Age, yes.
Age, sand, and mile.
Age, sand, and mile. And you need 1 word back from me. Age and sand obviously is time, but mile is distance. Yeah, time.
Okay. You see that was a moment of insight.
Because age and sand, I thought of an hourglass, and then
Yes.
like distance, length, and time. Okay,
And
that's cool.
and what he's saying is like the only input that you got were those 3 words.
Okay, I'm going to give you 3.
completely- Yes.
Okay. Right, the 3 are fire, joy, and web.
Ooh, my mind did something terrible there.
Fire, joy, and web.
So, no, but okay. I thought of a spider on fire, like,
No, but
and that
I mean-
brought me joy because I don't like spiders. But I mean,
you need a
that's-
word, not a concept. I'm with you.
But in the same way,
it's like a
it's
linking
like-
game, right? It's like a linking game. Like
It's a
trying to
linking
find,
game.
Do you know what I like doing? Actually, I like trying to find synonyms. Synonyms for things. So actually, what I've got this little exercise I do, which is you take a poem, and then you take the words, like just like a stanza, like a couple of lines, and you take the words in the poem and you swap them out for synonyms, but you still try keep the poetic structure. So not necessarily the rhyme, but like the rhythm in that, and then you swap words out for synonyms. I find that's really useful. And also what I like thinking of is words that, like a synonym is a word that's similar. Now, a xenonym is a word that's completely unrelated or alien. So words that are completely not associated with each other. Because I think it's quite easy. Shall we play a quick game? I'm going to say a word and you say a word that's immediately associated with it. Okay. Microphone.
Speaking.
Voice.
Modulator.
Tone.
Diction.
Pronunciation.
Words.
Okay, so it's pretty easy to do that backwards and forwards. But now the idea is to find a word that is so unrelated that it doesn't make sense. Like, for example, you can say thin air, but you'd never say fat water. Right? And you would say a multitude of fish, but you would never say the sadness of pencils. You see, so it's taking two ideas and putting them next to each other, and they make no sense at all.
Absolutely no sense. But in the act of making no sense, you've created like something.
Exactly. So like, for example, I was talking about like that iconic phrase, like a phrase that has more to it. So for example, and it sounds silly to say, but that phrase I just used, the sadness of pencils.
I mean, that's a title.
That is a title. So there's something significant about it. So what is it that resonates with the person when you say that phrase, right?
It's like that. It's when you hear a title or something like that, you get this idea, like this feeling in your mind, like there's something I could do.
There's something significant about that. Yes,
it's like
exactly.
the creativity working.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
You get sort of the sense when you have these moments of insight and this idea of something that you could do.
But it comes from beyond you, right? It doesn't come from your conscious thought
process.
Process. That's where it comes from.
Gonna say something like it feels like it's coming from absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, from outside or from beyond. Exactly. Well, the Greeks believed that inspiration came directly from the gods, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, they had the five. Was it five? I'm showing my ignorance of Greek mythology here, but the five muses.
Wasn't there 3?
No, I'm sure there were 5. I don't know. I'm thinking of Hercules. There were 5 in Hercules. There must be 5 in Hercules. There were 3 crones, mother, maiden, there were 3 old women. There were 3
with one eye.
Fates. The fates is what you're thinking of. Yeah, but the muses were the 5, and they, it's for the 5 different forms of art. And so they believed that inspiration came directly from the gods. So they acknowledge that creativity and inspiration comes from outside. Yes, exactly.
And it wasn't just like inspiration; it was like thought. So if they were feeling like sad,
thoughts and emotion as well.
Like
exactly.
Apollo's making me feel sad.
Just beyond
and
them.
Like,
yeah, that's way to abrogate responsibility.
Yeah, it's not me, it's Apollo.
It's Apollo. Yeah, no, Zeus is acting up today. Mars is bright tonight, so I'm feeling angry. Well, but I mean, this is the thing. So we've got an interesting idea. You know, the idea of the 4 humors, right? Yeah. So the balance between sanguine, choleric,
melancholic,
and phlegmatic. Between us, we know everything.
What
you don't know, I know, and what I know, you don't know. Okay, so it's like, so that's from within. So that's like having an imbalance in those 4 humors would result in a preponderance towards a certain character trait or something, which I thought is interesting.
It's interesting that that's sort of like...
But again, it's outside of your conscious control. It's something that you are subject to, not something that you have control of.
But it's now become something. It's not completely outside.
It's not supernatural.
It's sort of in you.
Yes,
but it's also you don't have a control.
Exactly.
There's always a sense of like it's completely out of control.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. You were talking a while ago when we were
about
chatting
you are
about
too.
this. Pardon?
You are too.
Tell me about this.
So what they do is there's these fascinating cases of people who have so the brain we know is divided into 2 hemispheres. That's common knowledge. And so the left side of the brain deals with sensory input from the right side of the body and controls the right side of the body, and so does the right side of the brain. Now, obviously, the left side of the brain, language processing is located in 2 areas, which is Broca's area and Wernicke's area. So Broca's area is words and Wernicke's area is grammar. Okay, so only the left side of your brain has any linguistic capability. The right side of the brain just doesn't have that. So the body that connects the 2 halves or the 2 hemispheres is called the corpus callosum. So there's various kinds of epilepsy which are cured completely because of an overactive corpus callosum. So are cured by severing the connection between the 2 sides of the brain. So there are examples of people who have the corpus callosum cut, and when they're dressing themselves in the morning, their right hand would grab a blue shirt and their left hand would take it out of their hand.
Ooh, imagine being like,
Exactly.
what the hell's happening?
But the thing is, they can explain the actions of their right hand. They can say, I took that because XYZ, but they cannot explain the actions of the left hand because the left side of the brain, which controls the right side of the body, has language and can explain its actions. But the right side of the brain does not have linguistic capability, so it cannot explain the actions of the left hand. So they have examples of people who they show an image, or one image to their right eye and one image to their left eye. They tell the right-hand side of the brain to pick up an object, say a Rubik's Cube. So they pick the object up. And then they ask the left side of the brain, why did you pick the object up? The left side of the brain doesn't know that it's because it was told to by the words on the screen. So it comes up with an explanation like I saw a subject, pick it up. And then they asked him, why did you pick it up? And he says, oh, I've always wanted to play with one of these. But that's the brain invents a reason for picking it up. Now, I don't know. That freaks me out.
That's
like,
quite freaky.
Deeply.
And it's interesting to see, like, for that half of the brain, it was this, the real reason why they picked it up.
Yes.
So you can see, like, this brain is just trying to create a reason.
Trying to create a reason for what it sees.
Nothing.
Exactly. So it's like, it's that whole idea. The whole idea of a brain in a jar. Like, how do you prove you're not a brain in a jar with some scientist who's like feeding your brain the right signals to make it seem like you're existing? Plato's cave, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you can see the result of the object, but not the object itself, and so you believe that thing is the object. Okay, so it comes from it comes from beyond you. So yeah, the idea of where does creativity come from? Does it come from? It's like this constant subconscious processing. That has to be, and the way that you and I are communicating now, and we're coordinating with you, our beloved audience, is via words. So our thoughts, which are racing at 1,000,000 miles a minute, I assume, for most of us, I don't know, are being encoded into words, which is a lot slower, transmitted and gone into your mind and decoded again. So there's all of that. I don't know. To me, it's like untapped potential. To me, it's like brain power.
Yeah, all these thoughts that will never get said.
Exactly, that will never get said because maybe they just don't make it through. Like maybe it's just the noise, and only some thoughts make it through, and some of them are acknowledged because they make sense. And it's when you're dreaming, and there's none of that conscious brain, which is moderating or limiting the constant flux of information. And without that conscious brain, your subconscious just does whatever the heck it wants. And I don't know about your dreams, but mine are so freaking weird.
Great.
That's the thing, because it's the subconscious mind just trying to make sense of the random impulses it's getting. And the only way it makes sense is by interpreting it by things that it already has experienced in life. And that is just like creativity. So it's to try and embed, try and embed something in your subconscious mind. And they say that people who actually, like, if you give people a bunch of information to memorize, and then give them a 10-minute nap or a 15 or 20-minute nap, I don't know how long it was in the study, versus asking them 20 minutes later of random activity, they found people who had a nap and actually did something like 40% better than those who did random activity, because their brain had a chance to process and like think about it without like distractions of everyday life. And I mean, I don't know, when you're in the shower, as I get great ideas when I'm in the shower because I'm not thinking about anything. My brain is just like on
point.
Like what is there's that great line, the sky was the color of a TV tuned to no channel. That's when my brain is doing that. That's when I get the best ideas, and they just like pop up and you're like, wow, look at that just happened. But it was completely nothing that you did. So your subconscious is like, I've got a great idea, here, you grab it. Okay, now it's your job to write that into a script.
now you do something.
And you're just like, thanks, brain. Either I do this or I feel like I'm not creative. It like screws you over at the same time as it blesses you with this amazing idea. So yeah, it's trippy as anything, but I mean, yeah, creativity. Whew, man.
So talking about creativity and thought, I was watching a documentary yesterday, and they had this interesting idea about how it evolved. And
how it evolved? Okay, keep talking.
So one of their theories is, there's a fire over here, so
yes.
I'm pointing to that, was the discovery of fire. Because, now listen, the theory is that before we had fire, everything was raw and, we eat like that.
And
so we constantly have, our brains need so much energy. We constantly need to find food and eat and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, but the ability to cook food makes the nutrients more available.
Now, so now when they discovered fire, the ability to cook food made the nutrients more available, which made when you eat, when you get the energy, you get more in less amount of time.
Yeah, so you have to spend less time working.
There's more time thinking.
To do nothing. Yeah, I know. If you look at early hunter-gatherer societies, those who have fire and can cook, you look at leisure time, and they reckon that early hunter-gatherer societies only worked for about 4 to 6 hours a day, and the rest was leisure time. The rest was just creative or family time or whatever the case was. And then you're also looking at cultures which have a strong, shamanism and visions and, that kind of really out there creative, the mind is really working subconsciously kind of thing. So it's an interesting theory, and that's also the thing. It's like, I think a lot of people's frustration with the life that they lead is that they don't have a creative outlet. I mean, I know I go crazy if I don't
do something creative,
with that, but I mean, even just consuming art, like even the simplest act of consuming art, I don't know, listening to a song, your favorite song or something. Yeah. And without that creative outlet, I think people are very stymied and frustrated. And I think, I don't know, just anecdotal evidence, that's what a lot of people are frustrated about, is not having that. Because, I mean, let's face it, the demands of modern life are incredible. And I think they're actually negative. I think a lot of things we do in our modern life are very bad for us as individuals, and I think very bad for us as a species in the long term. I think we're our own worst enemy from that side. And because of the fact that we don't have enough time to do nothing, I think that's incredibly important, is to actually allow our brain space. And that's the thing. People say, I lie in bed at night and all I can do is think about things that, like embarrassing things from my past, or my mind is racing and I can't get it to calm down. Yeah, because you fill your life so much.
Because that's the only time you get.
That's the only time your brain gets to just be down.
Overwhelming. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the only time your brain gets to do nothing and just to process everything that it's absorbed. We're a little off topic from the.
So let's bring it back to topic. Let's get to more practical applications of
applications
of things I found.
Of creativity, PAC.
So I watched a video, a TEDx talk.
Yes.
Called "The Theory of Creativity" by a guy called Duncan Wardle. And he talks about creativity in a while. And he also talks about this idea of we're working too much and we don't shower thoughts and all of that, like we've just touched on. But then he gave sort of things that we can do and things that famous people have done to sort of help them create, help them think, and get them essentially, if we're talking like theater-wise, out of maybe writer's block.
Okay, so the supposition is that the subconscious process can actually be harnessed and triggered and put to work rather than just flailing randomly and hoping it kicks in.
Yes.
How do we do that? Help me out. Help our beloved audience out, because I think it's a great idea.
So the first one, which is probably the most ethereal one, but he claims this Eureka moment. How do you get this Eureka moment? Almost like the moment of insight.
But how is it different from the moment of insight? Isn't it the same thing?
Just wait.
Okay.
So he talks about these ideas. We also touched on it a bit, that you get when you're asleep, subconsciously, these subconscious ideas. How do we take those ideas and put them to work? And he was saying something that Thomas Edison always used to do. And I think he said, though don't quote me on it, don't quote him on it, but I think he said that this term was coined by Thomas Edison because this sort of when the penny drops sort of thing, because he would sit with a penny between his knees and a tin tray underneath, and then he would fall asleep. And as he falls asleep, his legs would relax and the penny would drop wake him up, noise, yes. And then he would write down whatever he was thinking about or dreaming about.
Yeah. It's a great way to stay awake. Put something in your hand and hold your hand straight above your head as you lie down. And when your arm collapses, you'll wake up.
Yes.
Exactly the same thing. Yeah.
But like this idea of being abruptly stop thinking, stop dreaming, and you wake up and you still have this idea of what you were seeing, and then you write it down. Because I don't know about you, but I've had quite a few like story ideas, play ideas that I dream of, and then I wake up like in the middle of the night. There's no way to write.
You must write it down immediately. Well, that's the thing.
So he said, when that happens, write it down immediately. Yes.
You dream all the time.
Yeah.
But the only dreams that you remember... Okay, I was going to say the only dreams that you remember are the ones that you remember. But the only dreams that you remember are the ones that you were awake for.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Yeah, so people say, you got to keep a dream journal to journal, and then you'll remember your dreams. I mean, I don't know if you've ever woken up from a dream and like 2 hours later you're like, what was that dream? It was so amazing. Okay, but there we go, exactly. So to actually write down what you were thinking at the time. Yeah, exactly. There was a story about Roald Dahl as well, who had this mind-blowing idea of a story, but he was in the car currently driving across England and he had nothing to write on. So he went to the front of his car and wrote down the words in the dust on the bonnet of the car because he was so desperate to keep that idea. And by the time he got back, it was still there, and he actually wrote it down and then remembered it.
Yeah, so that's the same
interesting
sort of
little
idea.
anecdote, but yeah.
Because it all stems from this idea of these ideas coming from the subconscious, and they're ethereal, coming from somewhere else, and you've got to pin them down.
You've got to hang on to them and nail them down.
So another example he gave was Salvador Dali. What he would do, and Salvador Dali.
Just look at his art and you'll know.
Just look at his art.
Interesting guy.
And what he would do is he would fall asleep standing up by his easel. And when he fell down, he would wake up and then he would paint what he saw. What was his dream?
That's a bit extreme. Falling down. But okay, if it works for you.
But it's what he... he was a weird guy. But it worked because he's got extremely creative work. But what I would say, and what I was thinking in this term is if there's levels of creativity, that's the most basic form.
What is, sorry?
Doing this.
Tapping into the subconscious.
Doing sort of what maybe Salvador Dali would do. And you're sleeping and then just paint what you remember.
Yeah, it's just available. It's available right there.
Yes, it's creative.
Yes.
But you're just replicating it onto canvas.
Are you saying that's not a good thing? Are you saying that's taking effort?
I'm not saying
what are you saying?
It's just on the scale of...
So, I see.
Creativity is the most basic level.
So what is the... But I mean... I don't know about that.
No, that was just the thought that occurred to me.
But what would be the next step up the scale?
So, what next step up the scale would be if you're conscious, all right?
If you're consciously
creating something new,
okay,
but having it also still coming from a strange place. So, this guy was talking about he worked for Disney for a long time.
Yeah.
As sort of helping them create things.
Yeah, they call them Imagineers. Imagination engineers.
Yeah.
It's pretty
so one of his examples of how he says Walt actually created something, and how you should, if you're in a writer's block, or not necessarily even just a writer's block, if you're in a meeting at your job and you can't think of a new idea, is, and this is a very practical, you can do this, you can take a piece of paper and you write it down, is you make 3 columns. And the first column is you write all the rules pertaining to one thing. So for Walt Disney's thing, he wanted, when he was doing Fantasia, he had all these ideas to do in the movie theater, to have it be cold when it was cold, have it warm when it was warm. But the movie theater was like, no, we can't do that. It's a movie theater. So he came and he wrote down all the rules of a movie theater. You can't do this. You can't do that. You have to do this. It's for a certain amount of time. And then your second block is a what if block. And you take even just one of those rules.
What if we could break that rule?
So what if it wasn't just one room? And then from that, you start looking at the same idea differently. And he was like, what if you don't have to what if it's more than one room? What if it's a whole place? What if you're not taking a movie, but you're taking real actors and having the characters? What if the audience could interact with them? What if they each had their own place? What if they each had their own land? Disneyland. And that's apparently how Walt Disney thought about making Disneyland. And that comes from thinking about what he can't do and changing one thing and then finding a way. So you can apply that to your writing. You can go, if you're in a writer's block and you got, okay, I've got this person and he's gone into this room and there's a gun on the table and I don't know what to do next. then you could take, like, what if he wasn't the only person in the room? Okay, if he wasn't the only person in the room, then how would that work? And so he sort of, it's a tool that he's trying to get us to think about, which I thought was really helpful, because I thought he also talks about this idea, if you're an expert at something, it's almost like a trench. He describes like a river, like it's a deep river, and to get out of it or to go across it is difficult if you're just an expert in one thing. So another way that he says to help you with your creativity is to, if you're in a meeting or if you're just by yourself, bring someone who doesn't know anything about what you're doing.
Okay, I'm with you.
And he calls that the naive expert.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, explain it to a 5-year-old and ask a 5-year-old's opinion.
Yeah, the same sort of thing.
Exactly.
And then they won't necessarily give you more ideas, but they'll give you like a stepping stone to other ideas.
A different perspective, it's always good to run an idea past someone else. No, I'm 100% with you. That's a great idea, actually. I mean, how many things have you done and have I done that I've said to you, hey, what about this idea? And then you're like, have you tried this?
Yeah.
And then it like
same
completely
thing.
changes. It just sets you on a different path. Yeah, exactly. No, that's incredible, actually. You know, and it's simple things like that. It's not particularly difficult to harness that subconscious process.
Yeah.
You know, but you have to, I think, to be conscious of those techniques is very important. And to be conscious of the role that the subconscious actually plays, and to be, you know, not to slavishly follow it and say, oh, because it was, you know, like to actually think about it and critically think about it and consider it, but first to access it.
To get it there.
Exactly.
So I think I've got nothing else that I can think of.
But Alistair, have you thought about this?
Let's put that, let's get the 3 columns.
Okay, but that's great. I think we're going to wrap it up there for today, Alistair. It's been great speaking to you about this, a topic near and dear to my heart, how to be more creative. So hopefully, dear audience, beloved audience, we have given you some interesting ideas of how you can access that subconscious part of your brain. Thanks for tuning in.
And let's hope that there's lots of work being created by you guys now using our techniques that we've given you.
And we will see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. King Media Productions Centre Stage is a South African film and theatre podcast hosted by Alistair King and Daniels and Peter Bates, and produced with the generous assistance of Blended Podcasts, brought to you by Blended Audio.